Thank you. Thank you for the warm introduction. We're very happy to be here. It's great to see lots of familiar faces and also some unfamiliar faces. We're going to be talking today a little bit about the AI hype that's been happening recently and trying to dive into what's actually behind it. We would like to hear from you how you guys use these new AI tools. So if you could scan this and answer some questions, we'll be showing the results throughout the talk. I'll give you guys a couple seconds. I feel like a VIP with all these cameras pointed at me.
We also have the QR code on the next few slides, so don't worry if you miss it.
Yes, looks like most people are there. So let's start with a quick introduction. You guys can make up your minds whether we're qualified to actually hold this talk. I'll start. I'm Nick. As Nicolas said, I'm a PhD student here working on program verification, which until recently had some crossover with AI, but not too much, but that's increasing currently, as in most research areas, lots of AI applications. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and my other two speakers can introduce themselves, I think.
Yes, so I'm Max. I started, can you meet yourself? More than a decade ago as a software developer on COBOL, fancy AI technology, nearly. I did a lot of stuff around VIS and VISETH. Is there any mic still on? Nowadays I'm working as a cloud and digital workplace consultant. I hope we can make the link to why that matters for AI. And my touch points with large language models are mainly productivity tools, being it for development or for M365, so generating text.
Thank you, Max. So yeah, I'll do a short introduction from my side as well. So I'm Amir, Mikail. I studied actually here as well at ETH, mechanical engineering, and then did a second master's degree actually in science, technology, and policy. Because I realized, technology is one thing which is very important. We have to be keeping it efficient, good, working. But also, the other big thing is society and the policy and regulatory affairs. Because recently, and we have seen it more and more, there is more and more interplay between each other. And we need to have people, that knows about the technology regulating it. Otherwise, there will be always a mismatch between what we can do on the regulatory frameworks and within the society, and what we do, at the university and developing the technology. So I'm going to be speaking more today from this perspective, and I want to do a very short introduction on Cyberfy, which is as already been said, management and technology consulting company that has been recently found. We have a couple of people here with us today. So we are doing cybersecurity, cloud technologies, modern workplace as a core value. We're also looking on how to embed AI in all of this because, as you maybe already know, we have a lot of AI ongoing and new technologies coming up. And if you are interested into understanding more on what we are doing and how we're doing it, feel free to reach out to us after the talk. And with that, I guess I'll hand over back to Nick, who will be starting with some,
Yes, so what's the plan today? We're going to start by building up the hype a little bit, taking a look at what GitHub Copilot can do for magical things. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time kind of tearing the hype down again. We're going to look at how this actually works and what are problems both on a technical side and the societal side, and then kind of look at what's next. Where do we go from here? But let's start building up the hype a little bit. I want to show you some cool applications that I've discovered over the last year and a half using GitHub Copilot. I'm sure most of you know what GitHub Copilot is. If anyone doesn't, it's this AI tool that integrates with your IDE. So when you're coding and you have this tool running, and it will just give you suggestions like an autocomplete, but usually much longer, much more useful suggestions. I can heavily recommend students get it for free. So if you don't use it yet, you should think about it. But first of all, let's take a look at if you guys are already using it. So first question, who uses ChatGPT? That is almost everyone. 64 do, 9 don't. Unsurprising, I think, nowadays. Next question. Copilot. is, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so lots of people using ChatGPT, far fewer using Copilot. We'll see if we can change your minds right now. Because I personally find Copilot a much more useful tool than ChatGPT, just because it's integrated into your workflow. But let's take a look at what it can do, too. Yes, so this is VS Code, except that you can't see it yet. This will be VS Code. There we go. This is VS Code. And we have LaTeX running here. Is this mouse working? Okay. And, oh God, I can't see what's happening. All right, so this is a LaTeX file, and people who took a discrete math course will probably recognize this is the definition of a group. And we have a theorem here, which, it's a fairly basic theorem that we might be interested in proving. But, proving things is hard, right? We don't want to prove things ourselves. So let's take a look at what GitHub Copilot has for us here, if it decides to play along. Not looking great. Well, as I said in the other slide, live demos are always a good idea. There we go. That looks good. So now you guys can see here, it's proposing a proof. And let's say we accept this proof, and we probably want to end the proof. And now, hopefully, if we save this, we get a proof. That's fantastic. People who are good at discrete math may notice that this proof isn't exactly proving the theorem. It's like pretty close, but it's proving like something that's a little bit stronger. And so, but this is pretty good. And now I will show you another example. And this is my 2-minute research pitch of what I'm doing. So this is a Viper file. Viper is an intermediate language that we use to verify real other programming languages. And so I have this basic list data structure here, and I have this append method, and I would like to now have these other methods, right? These are very basic let's see, is this going to work? Interesting. Okay. All right. And so now this code is appearing. And, notice this is some weird language that we develop here at ETH, right? This is nothing that Copilot should have any idea of what's happening. But it completely, without issue, generates this create method, which looks fairly reasonable. And what's very cool is now this method verified. So we generated this code with machine learning, and now we used our verification tools to prove that it's actually the correct code that we wanted. And this is kind of some of what my research is looking into. If you guys think this is cool, check out Viper, viper.ethc.ch. Check out our group. We have student projects and stuff if you guys are interested, or hit me up after the talk. Let's get out of this horrible live demo and instead take a look at what's actually happening here. Now, I don't have time to explain all of machine learning, and I'm not qualified for that. I just want to highlight a couple things that I find super useful to know and to think about when looking at these new applications. So quick terminology, right? Most of the models that are being hyped very much today are these generative pre-trained transformers. GPT is often used synonymously with the OpenAI tools now, but this is originally actually a term from research. So generative just means it creates data. It doesn't classify data, which is another way to build machine learning models. The pre-trained is fairly self-explanatory, but even more than pre-trained, these models are foundational models, which means that we train them on these huge data sets. Well, I don't. Other people do. Like, for example, the entire internet. And the goal of these models is to be able to do lots of different tasks with maybe a little bit of adaptation at the end, but you have this model that's very smart. And like the last secret ingredient that was missing for the hype that has now been coming up is this transformer architecture, which was proposed by people from Google 2017, and kind of really enabled a lot of the stuff that's happening today. And so this is great, but I don't want to talk too much about all of this. I want to kind of talk about how we use these models to build the tools that we're all using nowadays. And so at the very basic level, what this model does is you give it a sentence and it predicts the next most likely word in the sentence over all of the training data. And that's all it's doing, right? All it's doing is predicting a word. And I think it's very important to remember this whenever you see fancy LLM things going on. All it's doing is predicting next most likely words. Now, this isn't very useful yet, right? We want more than just a word. So let's see how we can generate whole sentences. And it's not actually very smart. All we do is we take the output and we add it to our input and we throw it into our model again, and then we get the next word, and we can chain this on and on and on. And get whole entire sentences. So now we have a slightly stronger tool with which we can, for an input, generate sentences. This is all very, very simplified. If you know what you're talking about and think I'm doing this wrong, yell at me in the comments on YouTube. But now with this tool that can generate sentences, let's build something like a chatbot. So we have this person who's talking to this chatbot here. This is right? Yes, this is right. Right. And so we send a question, and what happens in the background is, well, we have this secret S message, the system prompt, and we attach the question to that, we put it into our model, and this will give us a question output, and we return that. And now we ask another question, and it turns out we don't actually have any state in this model here. All we do is we take the entire conversation that we had so far, so the first question and the first answer, add this new question, get a new output, and send that back. So while this whole bot somehow remembers what the conversation was, the model actually doesn't, right? We're just sending the entire conversation back again every time. So I mentioned this sneaky S, the system prompt, and this is a very common theme when developing these AI applications. You kind of have to define the rules for the model, especially with these foundational models. And you have to tell it, hey, you're a chatbot, don't explain how bombs work, be polite, all of these things. And I'm sure you guys have seen headlines where these things were leaked because generally people try to keep them secret. Great, so we've built the chatbot. Let's also build Copilot. So we basically have a tool running in your IDE, and it collects all the text before your cursor and all the text after your cursor and the last couple of files you looked at, and combines that to a string with another system prompt, and that can then make suggestions, again, just by guessing what are likely tokens to follow. Great. This is fantastic, right? We've solved all our problems. Well, maybe not quite. Let's kind of veer off here and start looking at some issues. And I want to talk about some technical ones, and then we'll talk about some more societal ones afterwards. This is probably my favorite example. This is the dumb Monty Hall problem. So I'm sure many of you know the Monty Hall problem. You're in a game show. There's 3 doors. You get to choose one. The game show host then opens one of the doors that you didn't choose, and you get to switch. So in the dumb Monty Hall problem, the statement is almost the same, except that the doors are transparent. So you can see where the car is. So clearly you shouldn't switch. You pick the door where you can see the car. But ChatGPT is entirely incapable, well, not entirely incapable, but at least ChatGPT 3.5 is not capable of answering this correctly. And this makes a lot of sense if you think about the fact that it's just guessing likely next words. Right? In all of the examples that it's seen on the internet, phrased slightly differently, you always see some statement of the Monty Hall problem, and then the answer is to switch doors. And so the most likely answer to this question is to switch. And we've made this tiny little change to the problem statement, but that's not a big enough change to change the probability distribution that somehow a different sentence should come out at the end. And so I think this is a fairly fundamental problem with what these elements can and can't do. Another fun example, if you ask ChatGPT who Tom Cruise's mother is, it's very good at telling you the answer. But if you ask it who Mary Lee Pfeiffer's son is, it's completely incapable of telling you the answer, even though these statements are equivalent. And again, right, it's not thinking in any shape or form. It's just seen the sentence, Tom Cruise's mother is Mary Lee Pfeiffer, a bunch of times on the internet, so it's capable of answering that question, but not the other one. All right, that's all from me. Amir is now going to talk to you about some societal problems that these LLMs have, even if they work correctly.
Exactly. Turn on my mic again. Perfect. So first of all, please scan this QR code, which you may have detected or not. but do it. There are other bunch of questions that we would like you to answer during the talk. So we have seen how it works, and I have talked about society and regulatory frameworks. So we see challenges within society, and I guess it's not new for you. You have heard about fails in AI. It's all over the news. You know, this happened, that happened, bias here, bias there. And I have brought with me some of the AI fails that I will not go through one by one, but I just would like to pick up some. So, for example, now all over the news, deepfakes, right? There's a lot of activities there. We can fake movies, we can fake videos, we can fake everything, speeches. So that's a big problem. Also, misinformation, social media, all over the place, right? But it's not only kind of playing around on the internet and then the digital sphere, but it also impacts us humans personally, where we, with predictive policing, where, police using models to go and understand where they need to do more controls. I mean, by being there in these areas more often, you get to see more crimes happening. So you feed the model again this, and it reinforces that this area is a problem area, and you start to only focus on this area and move away from other areas where you have crimes. So those are kind of societal problems in use on AI system and models. But also another example that I would like to highlight is healthcare diagnostics. So doctors are using AI models to detect cancer, to detect other kind of diseases, and we have models, and we have seen models that even suggest how it should be treated. And there, if the treatment is wrong, then you have a big impact on you as a person. One other recent topic, it's almost perfectly 1 month ago, is this one, and goes a bit in another direction, connected to deepfake. So there have been a bunch of school kids taking out pictures of their female colleagues, and then making nudes out of them, and selling them at school, creating porn movies and so on, and it's now under investigation. So here it's really a problem on how you can use these tools and how the impact is on society. So then, you have problems in society. Usually what happens, you put rules for the society. Who's putting the rules? The regulatory body. And this is a short overview on where we are standing currently with the regulatory landscape. And maybe to the surprise of some of you, you can see here China being in the lead. They have current regulations in place that strictly regulate the use of AI, and they're currently working on extending it, on including generative AI as well. Maybe I've heard of it, the EU AI Act, which will be highly impacting us. In the US, there are 2 different states, so you have on the state level a couple of AI regulations in place, on a federal level, not yet. And as you can see here, Switzerland, as usual, we're a bit more reluctant to just putting regulations out there. We're waiting and then looking at what the other world is doing before we start to act. Exactly. So I would like to take a deeper look into the EU AI Act, as this is most probably one that we will impact all of you in the near future, because it's expected to come in place next year. And actually, the fines are pretty heavy. So for non-compliance, it's up to 30 million euros, or 6% of the global turnover of the company. So it's not only for you if you're in a group, it's not only the other company, but for the entire group, the 6%. And how do they do that? They call it a risk-based approach. So what is a risk-based approach? Going quickly in, you see here, what is the impact or the damage on an individual by the system, from low to high? And that's kind of, in short, how they look at it. And then you have AIs that we say, okay, minimal risk, and here stuff like spam filters, gaming, there's no impact or real impact on a human being. Then you have stuff like limited risk, chatbots, generative AI, where there is a certain risk, but we can deal with it. And then, of course, systems that are in the high-risk category, such as autonomous vehicles, medical system devices, as we have seen, and so on. And then, of course, you have the unacceptable risk, stuff like social scoring and manipulation of cognitive behaviors, even in toys. That's kind of the example they bring. So it's not really depending on the use case, but really on the risk itself, on the human being. And how they would like to regulate it, they say, okay, stuff, minimal risk, no risk, we don't care. Do whatever you want. Basically, there's no real regulation behind it. With limited risk, it needs to be transparent to the user that he's using an AI bot or system. High risk, you will have to do audits, assessments, and there is a formal agreement that needs to happen, and you have to register your system in a kind of database. And unacceptable risk is just forbidden. So you're not allowed to work or develop these kind of systems. So a lot of regulations, you think, okay, how should I do that? How should I know? It's not only that they put the rules, but they also help you out with giving you some frameworks and tools. So there are hundreds of frameworks over the internet. I just picked a couple of them. A very good one is the NIST framework, as usual. Then you have, frameworks worked out by industries, and you also have tools in place where you can use toolboxes where you can run your code and it checks against several things such as bias and balancing of your database, so that you can make sure that during the creation of these tools or systems you are compliant if you follow these kind of rules and frameworks. Good, and with that I'd like to hand over to Max, who will be telling you on, how you can really use it in the day-to-day life.
Yes. So I try with this one until this one connects again. Okay. So what can we do with it? The hope is that these tools, as stupid as they are, as we saw, are still useful. But first, so you are cheating in your studies, that's great. You're using it for communicating with other humans, and you have some other niche use cases. We're honestly extremely curious when preparing this talk what you are already using this for. Because when we talk to people in the industry, they're constantly coming up with, we need to do something, but we don't know what. So there is a recent study of McKinsey that over 60% of the CEOs have an urge to do something because shareholders want something to be done, and just now we need to figure out what. So where we are right now, the GPTs that have come down on us are extremely helpful, but they're not intelligent per se. So we cannot just replace our coworkers with them, maybe. The current hype is less because there's a new model or something. We saw that the actual paper is relatively old, but because it's extremely well operationalized. And this whole system prompt engineering, the how we wrap it, is making a difference that everybody can just open a browser and type a message, and this system will answer. And a lot of how we will get from a hype to a productivity level depends on how we continue to operationalize. So we saw the GitHub Copilot, but the most relevant part, honestly, in today's work environment is producing texts. So people sit around all day generating Word documents, PowerPoints, Excels, and starting in a few days, and we cannot wait really to get our hands on it, Microsoft is putting out their version of Copilot for the whole M365 productivity environment. So you have tools that generate your PowerPoint slides, hopefully for you. And I'm extremely curious to see what it will do for the whole brain work that we do every day with these tools, if it's as significant as what it did to text. So what we will gain, hopefully, change in certain jobs. And us being consultants, we know that there's a problem for our business if we don't smart up, because these machines are extremely good at retrieving data and putting it out very eloquently, which is a core of our business. And other things like stock photos will significantly change. Many of you might have already seen that many news outlets start illustrating their news with Midjourney or similar tools, rather than buying Getty a lot of money, and that's why Getty is actually suing, because they lose their business model here. And other applications are support systems. I mean, every second web page that you visit by now has this bot that wants to talk to you, and if you actually do it, they become significantly more helpful than they have been 2-3 years ago. So try it once again. Writing code, writing text, all that stuff. So with the existing of these foundational models, we can proliferate into various fields with nearly no change. So they are, as we saw, Viper code can be generated without any pre-training. That's just a GitHub thing that is not like set in Nick's lectures and learned about Viper. It can just, by the power of this foundation model, do things. And so we think that there will be less busy work, like meeting minutes. I mean, horrible much hours of human beings are invested into writing meeting minutes. And it's not even always good. If you're active in VIS or VSETH, you have hopefully only once, but most likely many times discussed how meeting minutes should look like. Now you have a VOD protocol of every meeting that you want. And even better, you can just summarize it afterwards, because this is also something a computer can now do. Summarizing with this very beautiful slide, and the guy talks into a lamp. Why did we put this lamp on the slide? Because we didn't. So what we tried today is just generate this whole presentation for you, because we don't have time. It turned out to be not optimal. I assume many of you already saw these small boxes up there, and they stood for what tool we used. So we tried to use BART, we used ChatGPT, we generated the nice GitHub picture with DALL-E, and we had this nice AI presentation maker to actually have beautiful slides. You usually had this very standardized way of the slides, because we just showed you the prompt that we were trying to use to make that slide, and then we had the output on it, and we just cut out stuff. So we had a rather rigorously engineered system prompt, because these things are extremely wordy. So what worked fairly well is this slide, what GitHub Copilot is, and this is actually why we told you, because we assumed that most of you know, but this is one of the only slides that we could use from the system, because everything else that is a bit interesting, we weren't able to generate so far. So honestly, after spending way too much time fighting with the tools, we just gave up, because it's extremely helpful for factual slides and things that you can literally Google, but it's not very helpful if you want to talk to an academic audience that has a significant knowledge about the topic, and most likely several people in this room understand these systems better than we do in detail. So if we start explaining you that AI is a wonderful tool and it can do magic, that's not actually helpful. So in fact, it was easier for us at some point to just do it ourselves for certain things. And most importantly, the whole storyline. So this surprise that we planned so long, that didn't come up by a machine that tells us, now you drop the mic and the surprise is there. That is not possible. And also a slight problem for us, especially as consultants, is the look of the slides. So we have a very beautiful slide master, and we would love to use it, but we couldn't figure out how to say, ChatGPT, please use our slide master, and so on. We tried with this very beautiful tool that did something that I think if I would go to an elderly's home, I could use this presentation, because it's shallow and it's interesting, it looks good, but it's not for you as an academic audience. And also, we have these problems in it. So large language models are AI models, and the most famous one is GPT-3. I didn't want to stand in front of you today talking about this, because it's just off. So we have the topic of hallucinations, and now we are in the problems that are less on a purely technical side or on a like societal side. That's how we operationalize. How do we fix that it just hallucinates and overgeneralizes stuff, and how do we fix that there is a certain knowledge cutoff? As most of you knew, September 21 used to be the knowledge cutoff for ChatGPT, so it was until rather recently not able to answer you more recent questions. So VIScon is apparently a symposium on visual computing. I told him, hey, look at this website, it's something else, and it was like, sorry, I cannot do that. And now we will start to be able to do this because they start to have a better horizon. Also, this slide that Amir had to fight through. So we have a problem that it's very happy to give us words, a lot of them, but it's not so rigorous on the levels. So we have like real problems. We have some problems with application, and then we have autonomous vehicles. So the level is rather varying, and that also means that actually you have to use your brain when you use these presentations, because what is written there is helpful. So we don't have to type this is a plus, but you also have to think about it. And you have to keep a certain domain-specific knowledge. And this will not go away just because these tools are extremely good at helping writing text. It will support us, hopefully, and it will mean that most of you should be able to craft a system prompt for whatever you are presenting in the future, because we need to learn how to interact with them, but it is just not intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence, even though even we use it on a daily basis because, yeah, the CEOs need to do something with AI, you know? And so maybe closing up with a picture that I didn't generate, but I just stole it, from the AWS Cloud Days recently here in Zurich, where we had Evgeny Ilvin, that is a principal AWS solution architect. So I guess he knows roughly what he's talking about in terms of AI, and listening to his presentation, I think that he does. So we are not even at the top of the hype. So he assumes, and we also share this assumption, that there will be even more hype. So there will be even more inflated expectations, what this tool will do and how many jobs it will cost, and that why are you studying? Like, the tool will replace you? No, that will all inflate, and then if you know these kind of Gartner hype cycles, then there will be this valley of disillusion. So we are not yet there. So many people will realize it's not that smart, it's technically not that smart, and it's also maybe not that smart to just use it blindly for policing and healthcare and taking care of the elderly. But we will reach a certain plateau of productivity. And the fun thing is, given the speed that this technology ran over us, so I mean, we cannot hold this presentation next year because it will be so outdated that you will be bored and leave the room. So we don't even know when we will reach that plateau. It can be in 1 year, it can be in 5 years, but it will be in the foreseeable future. And we are actually looking forward to all these productivity tools, because honestly, if you, like, once you go to GitHub Copilot, you are hard to go back, and we have done this to ourselves, and we cannot code anymore without it. Just as you don't like to add up big numbers without a calculator. And having that said, I hope that this kind of calculators will help us a lot in the future. And we only ran a bit into the Q&A. And now we're extremely curious what you do with these tools and for the questions.
Please, a round of applause for this interesting talk. I am actually very interested in those results, so maybe they're a little bit small, but...
That is changeable.
Okay. So now we have some time for question. I mean, it's lunch, so we have actually a lot of time for questions if you want. So I see already a hand raised over here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the amazing talk. I have two broad questions. First is we covered the first order AI fails, but what about second order AI fails for the broader society? For example, first is asymmetric job creation and destruction, and the second is widening socioeconomic disparity by AI access and AI literacy. So expanding on the first one, we know that let's say we continue to improve how we operationalize LLMs for productivity. In the next 2-3 years, let's say the average worker is like 1.5x more productive. Considering the total amount of work to be constant, the labor force will have to be cut down by 1.5x, at least in industries like consulting, technology, etc. But sure, there's a small proportion of new jobs being created in AI research, but that's not large enough to compensate for the decrease in the workforce that we have. Do we have any policy interventions or anything coming up to actually address those? And the second is about AI literacy. So for example, there are countries where people don't have internet access, so there are levels of literacy. First is how you write your name, do you understand English? Then do you have internet access? And then are you AI literate? So there are countries which are technologically very advanced, and now they have AI at their side, and people know how to use AI. And so they're infinitely more capable than countries who are still figuring out to provide internet connections to their whole population. So it's going to increase the socioeconomic disparity between these countries. So these are second order consequences. Maybe they'll play out in the next 4 or 5 years or 10 years maybe, but do we have anything for this?
Can
I go to the second first?
okay.
So I think I try to answer the second one first. I think it was less a question than more a statement. I completely agree with this ability to use these productivity tools will make a gap. So also one thing that is extremely interesting, currently these tools, what you pay for them is less than what the companies need to invest to make them run. So there has been this recent publication by Ars Technica about GitHub Copilot, where you pay like $10 a month or so, and GitHub needs to pay for power use up to $80 per month. So there is also a significant cost factor. So not everybody can finance that. And coming again from the productivity tools, just this PowerPoint and Word thing, the M365 Copilot that is being general available next month, it costs $30 per user per month. That is significantly, like 2 or 3 times, depending on your abonnement in default, more than the usual Office subscription already. So it is significant what you need to pay for that. And that obviously gives countries that have this economic background the ability to use that tool. So there is like no discussion right now. But maybe on the regulation, it's better if you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of a two-folded answer, and it goes a bit the second fold into what you have said. So I will start with the first fold, which is society and then the regulations. So usually how the governments regulate, and that's kind of unfortunate a bit, is by pressure. You need to have society pressure to put some regulations in place. We have the pressure now to regulate do's and don'ts, but the regulators are not yet there to think about what will the impact be. They know that there will be an impact, but you first have to limit what you can do and what you cannot do. Then take it as a next step. There are a lot of associations looking into, how this will change in society with, new jobs created that are maybe needs more education, and jobs lost that maybe anyone can do with less education. But this is, in the history of technology, nothing new. It's always the case when new technology comes up that is revolutionary. So, for example, the car, same story. Replacing horses and people, doing maneuvering people with the horse carriage instead of the car. The same with kind of what's called that? Dampfmaschine. The steam machine. It was exactly the same thing. So throughout the history, there are always these kind of changes in society where you move from an old technology, a new technology, which will have impact on labor and education. So That's the first fold. And the second fold, the answer is exactly what Max was kind of trying to say is companies, and that's maybe to the surprise of some of you, are not that quick to adapt this kind of technology because it's costly, it needs a lot of change to manage inside. So it's not easy to roll out a tool where you have impact on 20, 30, 40,000 employees because you have to make sure that everyone is kind of adapting the new change. And those processes takes years, not months, years. So, and with that, you have time a bit that, and this kind of damps a bit the effect of, jobs being, destroyed and new jobs coming up. So yeah, we are here on a very high pace within the university. So we're always at the forefront of technology, but the industry is much, much slower, and the regulator is even slower. So, yeah.
So especially until it's used in the public sector, there will be, I guess, a decade or so. So save jobs there.
Could you go back to the slide with the Gardner curve? Or what's it? I don't remember the name anymore. Gardner hype cycle, right? So, when is it most sensible to start a company in the respective area? Is there like a general answer you can give? Right. Okay.
So I guess. Yes, before the hype, then you can already sell before the peak of inflation and you live in the Bahamas or so. But honestly, we have this plateau of productivity. And that means that companies have operationalized these technologies in a manner that is actually useful. So honestly, here, most of the companies die because they told, we will, you can fire all your workers using our cool tool. And finding out not even a presentation of 30 minutes can be done, that will not be the case. So if you're not already founded your company, then here will be a lot of ideas what to do with it. So this is definitely also a stage. But this, I assume many of you already know this kind of hype cycle. It's just, we are in this valley then, and people are saying, okay, it's not solving every problem and it's not solving world hunger and so on. But still, I think, especially with the Copilot use cases and so on, we already see that there is a use for it. It's not like it's a completely useless tool that just burns CPU or GPU hours, but it is a tool that can be used. So if you have a good idea and it sounds like it actually provides a value and you can sell it to companies that can then adopt it, it's the whole path. But maybe here the market will be more and more saturated, basically.
Maybe to draw a bit of attention to blockchain and cryptocurrency, we have seen the hype there, so we passed the hype, and this technology is currently between the valley and the plateau of productivity. So just to give you a bit of a relation to another technology that you have maybe experienced yourself, we're putting it on the Gartner hype cycle.
So I just heard your answer that, and I also remember actually reading somewhere that they're losing money, the company is losing money with the Copilot. And so I was wondering how it's going to work in the future. So are they going to develop, in your opinion, are they going to develop something which is more energy efficient and therefore they don't have to pay for the energy, or are they just going to increase the price for the user? What's your take on that?
So I guess one thing that will probably happen is currently we're using these very big foundational models for everything, and these big foundational models are much more expensive to run. And you can use smaller models that you kind of train more specifically for more concrete tasks, and I would assume that people will move away from these. We just use this one foundational model for everything to more smaller, more fine-tuned specific things, which are then cheaper to run. But I'm not sure that's going to solve all of the problems, right? So I think there will also be issues where things will just get more expensive.
And being a bit cynic about it, even if they lose money, as long as the shareholders are happy, which they are definitely, because if you're on the forefront right now, then people are extremely happy. then it's okay. So honestly, I think this GitHub Copilot moment, I'm very curious how it will look for the productivity suites. If people realize that this is a tool that they cannot miss anymore, then the price is somewhat irrelevant. Even if I'm talking about 30 francs per user per month, if I can justify that it saves an average 1 people day per user per month, it's irrelevant what we pay for it. So maybe starting very cheap to just give a broad audience the possibility to try these tools is a valid strategy. And I mean, obviously they will be highly optimized. There will be, like, NVIDIA shares are through the roof for a reason. There will be like technological advancements. There will be, I mean, a lot of research has been gone into highly specialized PCBs for ML applications, especially here at ETH. So there will be all these advancements, but I think also if people realize how tremendously helpful these tools are, the prices will just skyrocket. And you have these specialized applications that are extremely expensive and they still have a market. And maybe these tools are these kind of applications, increasing again the gap between people that can afford it and can't.
Any more questions? Great. I think in that case, I'm going to release you to lunch. Thank you so much for your engagement. That was very good. But also thank you to our great speakers. I would like to give you a little gift before we all leave. So thank you so much, Max. I hope to see you next year and every year. And of course, Nick and Amir as well. Please give it up one more time for our great speakers.